This is ratios and proportions. So first of all, let's discuss what a ratio is and what a proportion is. A ratio is a fraction. For example, 2 over 9 is a ratio. You may see a ratio written with the two dots like this, but you can always change it and make it a fraction. So keep in mind, a ratio is just a fraction. A proportion is when you have two fractions that are set equal to each other. For example, 2 over 9 equals 19 over 81. This is a proportion because you have one fraction equal to another fraction. Sometimes you may be asked if a proportion that's given to you is a true proportion or false proportion. To check if a proportion is true or false, you need to find what we call cross products. The cross products are a simple multiplication of two numbers inside of the proportion located at a diagonal. In this case, your first cross product is the multiplication of 2 by 81. So 2 times 81 is your first cross product. 2 times 81 is equal to 162. Now let's find the second cross product, and that would be the multiplication of 9 by 19. 9 times 19. That is 171, and that is your second cross product from this proportion. In order for you to answer the question if the proportion is true or false, you have to find each of the cross products, and for the proportion to be true, the cross products must be identical. As you notice, our first cross product is equal to 162, and our second cross product is 171, so this proportion is false. It's not a true proportion. Sometimes you will be given a proportion where one of four numbers is the unknown. And to solve for that unknown, you have to still use cross products. Now for those problems, we will be assuming that our proportion is true. So here you have 2 over 6 equals 7 over x. I'm going to start by finding the first cross product, which is 2 times the x, and that's just 2x. And then the second cross product, which is 6 and 7, so 6 times 7, 42. And since we assume this is a true proportion, by default, the two cross products are equal to each other. Now, this is a simple one-step linear equation where you want to get your x by itself, and to do that, you just need to remove the 2. Since 2 is attached to x through multiplication, you're going to divide by 2, which gives you x equals 21. Another example of finding the x is x over 64 equals 15 over 40. Let's find the first cross product. X times 40, that's 40x. And 64 times 15, that's 960. To find x, you need to remove the 40. Again, it's going to be done through division. 960 divided by 40 is 24, so x equals 24. Now, if 40 couldn't go into 960 evenly, you leave it as a fraction, but you try to simplify it. Here is your number 3. 6 over 7 equals x over 138. Now, this specific question is asking us to round to the nearest hundredths. So in questions like this, once you get your final answer for the x, you will be putting it in the calculator and rounding to whatever decimal point it asks you to round. Here it says to the nearest hundredths. We'll start the same exact way. We're going to find our cross products. 6 times 138 is 828. That's your first cross product. And then your second cross product is 7 times x, which is 7x. To get the x by itself, we have to divide both sides by 7. 828 divided by 7 is 118.28571, etc. And then on the right side, we have our x. Now, the question did ask us to round to the nearest hundredths. Your hundredths place is this 8 right here. That is the second digit after the decimal point. To round to the nearest hundredths, you're working with the 8. But what happens with that 8 is determined by the following digit. In our case, it's 5. 8 can stay as 8, and that happens if in place of the 5, you would have a number that is 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0. In that case, 8 stays at 8. But if in place of your 5, you have a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, which is our case, we have a 5, then 8 becomes the 9, and everything else after that 8 is gone. So the answer is 118.29. Here's number 4. 2 equals x over 4. Now, some might say this isn't a proportion because we know a proportion is when two fractions are set equal to each other, and here we don't have two fractions that are equal to each other. However, remember, any integer can become a fraction if you place it over 1. And here you have your two fractions that are set equal to each other, and we're going to do the cross products. So 2 times 4, that's 8, equals 1 times x is x, and then you're done. 8 equals x equals 8. There is nothing to solve here. Here's number 5. 5 over 6 over 5 equals 8 over n. Now I want you to notice that this fraction line here is longer, so that tells you that your left fraction of the proportion has the 5 on the top, and it has 6 over 5 on the bottom. So when you're doing your cross products, 5 will be multiplying the n, and that will get you 5n. And 8 will be multiplying 6 over 5. I'm going to clean this up a little bit, so I will go ahead and multiply 8 by 6 over 5. To do so, I'll place 8 over 1 and multiply the tops, so 8 by 6, which is 48, and the bottoms, so 1 times 5, which is 5. And then on the left side, I have 5n. Now, I don't like to operate on fractions, and again, if you do, please feel free to go ahead and divide both sides by 5. But I'm going to go ahead and first remove the fraction by finding the LCD. Now, LCD here is 5. That's the only denominator. So I will be multiplying the left and the right by 5. On the left, you now have 25n. And on the right, you can just cancel these 5s, leaving you with 48. Finally, to find n, all you have left is divide both sides by 25. Giving you n equals this fraction. It cannot be simplified, and you were not asked to round, so please leave it as a fraction. Our final example will be a word problem with proportion. Here's the word problem. If Anushka walks 6 miles in 50 minutes, then how far will she walk in 110 minutes if she walks at the same speed the whole time? If necessary, round your answer to the nearest tenth of a mile. When it comes to word problems with proportions, I like to create a little chart that will place the information that's given to me in appropriate cells. So here we are working with miles and minutes. And what's happening is she is taking 2 trips. So you have trip 1 and you have trip 2. So the first trip that is described to us is 6 miles in 50 minutes. So for the first trip, 6 miles, notice this is my miles, so I'm putting 6 under miles, and then 50 minutes. For the second trip, you're given the number 110, and that one is the minutes. So 110 will go into the minutes, and then the leftover cell that is not filled up is going to be your x. This is it. This is your proportion. We have our one fraction, 6 over x. We're going to place the equal sign here, and then this is our second fraction. 6 over x equals 50 over 110. Let's find our cross products. 6 times 110, that is 660. And 50 times x is 50x. To find x, you divide both sides by 50. 50's cancel. And 660 over 50 is 13.2 equals your x. So in 110 minutes, she will walk 13.2 miles. And that makes sense because in 50 minutes, she walks 6. So that means in 100 minutes, which is double the 50, she should walk double the miles, which would be 12. We were walking a little longer than double, so it should be a little more than 12, and that's what we got.